Your Honor, I think I'd actually like to exclude witnesses. So I'd make a motion to exclude all the witnesses and have them be in the waiting room until called, unless they're a party to the case.
Right. Mr. Agnosto, any thoughts on that?
No, Your Honor, it's my understanding generally the court excludes witnesses until they are called. I anticipate that Ms. Winkle's case today is going to take up the majority of the day. I'm wondering if those witnesses can come back tomorrow, if that would be appropriate, as opposed to sitting in the waiting room all day today.
Yeah, my sense is the plaintiff will consume the entire day. Ms. Winkles, do you agree?
Absolutely. And I tried to stick it to one day, giving us each a day.
And again, I'd encourage the parties that are being excused, or the witnesses who are being excused, not to watch the proceedings. That would defeat the purpose of excluding you from watching the proceedings. And let me just give a little background on that, is that the hope is that sometimes when people are testifying, then they hear another person testify, there's maybe be an unconscious conforming of one's testimony to that, and so that's what we're trying to avoid. So please do not observe the proceedings. We've got Kelly, Sherry, Jaden, and Kai. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so with that said, we'll turn the time to the petitioner's counsel, Ms. Winkles, for opening.
Yes, Your Honor. So this central to today's discourse is about the 3-year-old child. That's what we're here about. I think there's an old maxim that I was actually looking up about past behavior being the most reliable indicator of future actions, unless there's some sort of intervening or significant intervening circumstance. So really, a person's past is more likely to become their future unless something happens to change that. In the current case, we have a father who you're going to learn all about his past behavior. And his past behavior includes such things as medical neglect. This little girl was practically deaf until she was 18 months old. She wasn't vaccinated. She wasn't taken to the doctor. Due to her lack of hearing and her lack of medical intervention, she was so significantly delayed that she couldn't even speak one word. It's also about the fact that this child was allowed to kind of wander around, that parenting functions had been delegated. That dad was more interested in games, video games, and smoking marijuana and hanging out with friends than he was about his child. This child was bumped to multiple residences where dad and child were kicked out. Many of the reasons for those, and you're going to hear testimony today, were because dad was neglecting the child, leaving the child in a dirty diaper for somebody else to change, leaving the child unfed, essentially treating the child as if she weren't his responsibility, that she was always somebody else's responsibility and only his when he needed her to be. And so that's the history. And I'm going to go a little bit more into detail. So what we really need to look at for this minor guardianship is, has that history continued? And you're going to hear from Mr. Agnosto, and they're going to say it hasn't. But the only evidence they're going to show you is an online parenting course. When I go through what has actually happened in this case, it becomes instantly clear that more than an online parenting course is needed. So first, this child originally lived with the mother, and at 3 months old was taken by CPS and placed with the father. The father moved in with his girlfriend and Melody Boone, and Melody Boone is here today and she'll testify. And what she's going to testify about is that the 12 months that he was living there, he essentially let this daughter walk around, had no idea where she was. He would cage her with gates. He wouldn't feed her. He would give her candy. He was so engrossed in his phone that the child was isolated, unchanged, unmonitored, and he was the only sole caregiver. At the point where it became too much was where Mr. Ludwig stopped bathing and stopped cleaning the child at all as well. And Miss Boone during that period asked him to leave the residence. She was in the belief that the child was in danger and neglected, and I believe she actually contacted CPS. That couple broke up and the father moved to a different home. And what he did is he moved into the petitioners. He moved in with my clients. He promised them that he would work, and he went to work every day. It appeared so my clients didn't have a problem watching the child. He would go to work and come home. Well, it was discovered that he actually didn't have a job, that he was leaving the house and going to his friend's house to smoke marijuana. My clients were upset because this is a man who had provided absolutely no financial support to the child, had not taken the child to a doctor, had not gotten the child's educational needs or anything met at all. And so they asked him to leave, and they said, you need to leave, but you can keep the child here. So they signed a 6-month custody order, which wasn't valid, but it shows the intent of the parties. During that initial 6 months, my clients took the child to medical intervention, to Progress Center, to preschool. This child went from knowing no words whatsoever to now she's on level. She had significant intervention. She had myringotomy tubes installed. She had another issue, I believe, with her eyesight. That was fixed. Had dad still been in the picture without any of this oversight, it's unlikely as to when he would have noticed that the child was deaf. It had taken him a year and a half. It's unlikely when he would have noticed that she wasn't speaking, wasn't hearing, and was really not center in this world. She was kind of in her own spot and not developing. My clients took that upon themselves. Dad never asked. And in fact, you're going to hear testimony where they state to dad, do you want to know what's going on? And Mr. Ludwig says no. You're also going to hear testimony about Mr. Ludwig's behavioral issue. And so at the 6-month point, somewhere around that point, Mr. Ludwig got into a fight with his sister Taylor, or his stepsister Taylor. They got into a fight. My client tried to distance them both from each other. This was over the father's parenting skill. Mr. Jaden Ludwig got upset, and he got upset, and you're probably going to see him upset today. He's been upset in another hearing, and he appears to not be able to control himself. And when he got upset, he began to hit Kelly, my client, in the face. You'll hear from the officer, Deputy Pattison, who will testify as to what everybody said at the time. This got a no contact order in place only between my client and Mr. Ludwig. But Mr. Ludwig ghosted this child. Now he's going to claim that this with no contact order, this is the reason he didn't see his child for over a year, close to 18 months. But that's not the truth. We're going to read text messages from the family, not Kelly, but from the rest of the family that say, please come see your child. Do you want to see your child? And crickets. He's asked repeatedly, crickets. No payments, no effort to get to know this child, no effort to see his daughter. He blames it all on this no contact order. And then he claims that he was the one attacked. Now, it's true that it was dismissed because the witness at the time, who was Teresa Ludwig, was one of them. She didn't want to testify anymore against her grandson. So that was dismissed, but the order was in place. And Mr. Ludwig could call his dad, he could call his sister, he could call just about anyone to see the child. He chose not to do it. So something happened after he was kicked out in about July of 2021. And that is he started spending more time with his grandmother. At that point, we really see a shift in dad's energy and dad's need to see this child and to want to be in this child's life. And I think that's significant because we have text messages from Teresa as well that are speaking to Kelly and to Kai Ludwig. I want to see this child. I want to see the grandchild. And it's very normal grandparent need to see a child, but it appears to be consistent with when she felt that she wasn't getting the visitation she wanted. Suddenly now we have father back in the picture seeking to collect the child. So the question here, and we're going to elicit testimony that shows that it's the father doesn't have a vested interest. It's actually the grandmother that has a vested interest. The grandmother and the girlfriend here, Michelle Harrington, have provided nearly all the care in this case to the child. The dad, you'll see photos, the dad just kind of sits off to the side. They snap a picture, but really any visitation the dad has, he doesn't utilize. Instead, he's on his phone, he's somewhere else. And you're also going to hear testimony that when he's supposed to be, there's a court order that he's supposed to be watching the child alone. Instead of doing that, he's dropping Michelle and the grandma off at his friend Dallas's house and then picking up the child while he's alone. And then he will drop the child back off there. And then he'll go to 420 and you'll see a Google takeout showing these very directions. We downloaded his Google takeout, which shows his location history. The fact is that the basis for minor guardianship is here. Dad has a job now at $16 an hour. He clears around $2,000 a month. He has never lived anywhere where he has had to pay any money. His entire life, he's essentially, I have no better word for it, mooched, a place to stay. He is reliant on the kindness of others. Where he lives is completely dependent on another. There's no lease, there's no HUD, there's no housing. And so if one person decides to kick him out, and that's happened repeatedly, then this little girl and him are homeless yet again. That's the first one. The other one is even when he has time, he delegates. He's late, he misses visits, he doesn't show up. In fact, he's not showing up this weekend. He drops the child off early, often unfed. He doesn't call in. There's no consistency or stability here. Kind of the biggest one is 2609 is very clear about you have to be able to be willing to protect the child's safety. You have to be able to make good decisions for the child. You're going to hear testimony that vacillates between I live with grandma from dad or I live with my girlfriend. The fact is that he lives with his girlfriend. The problem with that is the other person resident in that house is the girlfriend's son, who is a registered sex offender convicted of rape of a child. Having the child there and dad wanting to take the child there and informing the GL at one point shows the type of decisions that dad makes. And you're going to hear testimony and you're going to see Google take out that he's already been taking the child there contrary to court orders. Now, this is a 3-year-old little girl that can't protect herself, that needs dad to. Dad has historically never done it. And now we have a registered sex offender that was convicted of rape. Dad says, well, no, don't worry, I'm going to move to grandma's house. Well, grandma's house is 2.5 hours away from where dad's job is. So the likelihood of that is slim. Additionally, Michelle Harrington provides dad most of his money. So again, his economic state, his housing, all of that is dependent on the kindness of others. He wants to be in this child's life when he feels like it. He wants to have fun on Labor Day. He doesn't pick up the child. This man can't provide housing. He can't provide food on his own. He can't provide clothing, education, medical support, any of that. Everybody has always done it for him. The child's welfare is in extreme danger because if this guardianship ends, dad will go back to the person paying his bills. He'll go back to Michelle Harrington. This court will have absolutely no oversight and the child will be living with a registered sex offender. Finally, just to mention, we have asked repeatedly for dad to show any sort of action here. My clients don't want to take Jaden's child away. My clients just want Jalen protected. The GAL, my clients have asked for a drug and alcohol evaluation with collateral contact. Mr. Ludwig says, who's going to pay for that? I don't want to do it. It's never done throughout this whole thing, even though we've repeatedly requested it, and nearly everybody involved has said he's had an alcohol or marijuana issue. He states he can't afford it. That this is a man that you'll see through testimony spends a lot of money on online games, on online gambling, on different videos, and yet has no money to pay for this SUDS evaluation. He doesn't pay child support. So all of his money is he's not paying rent. Then he says, when we ask him for a mental health evaluation, the same thing. I don't need it. You haven't proved it. Who's going to pay for it? Again, same argument. And then we have the DV evaluation. There is a history of DV in this case, and you'll hear about his former girlfriend. You'll hear about Kelly Prape, and you'll hear from Melody Boone. And again, dad says, who's going to pay for it? And then blames everything on Kelly. The fact is we've all been asking for this. It would seem that if father wanted this child back badly enough, that he would jump through any hoop. He would do anything rather than doing an online parenting course, which may or may not have been him. He's literally done absolutely nothing different. He comes to this court seeking a complete change, seeking custody returned without having done anything. And so I go back to past behavior is often the most reliable indicator of future actions unless mitigated by significant intervening circumstances. There haven't been. And that's what we're still waiting for. Dad to have his own place, not to live with a registered sex offender, to have a job that he can support the child, to realize that you can't let other people take care of your child, to have doctors set up to take an interest in them, do the evaluations, to do the treatment. Being a parent is a lifelong journey. We hope, and my clients hope, that he becomes the parent. But at this point in time, it would be a danger to dismiss this guardianship. This child is in a very safe, stable place. And the only reason she can hear, the only reason she's at level, the only reason that she has friends at this point is due to my clients. Thank you.
To be straightforward with the court, I got to tell you, Your Honor, that I'm overwhelmed. I've been overwhelmed by counsel and by Mr. Ludwig and his significant other, who are the petitioners in this case. They have, apparently the means and the ability to litigate this case, to the ends of the earth, and that's what they're doing. And I've come to court on behalf of my client. I'm court appointed on behalf of Mr. Ludwig on several occasions, saying that we needed to move this case along. And we were in front of Commissioner Nelson, and Commissioner Nelson was in the position that he was agreeing that we were going to have to start overnights with my client down in Oregon, where Jalen would be, and he would be living with his grandmother, Teresa Ludwig. And we were getting to that point, and then Commissioner Nelson retired, and then we've had other commissioners since then, and that progress got stopped, and they have fought tooth and nail, to prevent my client from having overnight visits with his daughter on under the emergency guardianship case, and before our hearing today. They have fought that tooth and nail. And so, and I put it to you, Your Honor, the reason that they have done that is because what would happen? So Jaylen would go down to Teresa Ludwig's home. My client would be there with Jaylen. Everything would go fine. And the petitioners are terrified of the court seeing that his plan for Jaylen to reside with Teresa Ludwig and him, I mean, they'd both be there, was perfectly feasible and working fine. It's interesting. I got to point out, Your Honor, you'll find out that Kai Ludwig, when he got custody of my client and his sister, lived with Teresa Ludwig, lived in the same house that Teresa Ludwig is in now. And it was a resource for Kai Ludwig, but it can't be a source for Jaden, my client. So they have a vested interest in wanting to maintain custody of Jaylen, and it's just wrong. It's just wrong. And so I need the court's help, because I'm quite frankly overwhelmed when I get 500-600 pages for trial today of documents, and here we are. What you're going to hear is that for a period of time, a little over a year, from about when Jaylen was a year and a half to 2.5 years, my client didn't have any contact. And the reason he didn't have any contact was that Kelly Crate had gotten a protection order, an anti-harassment order, that prevented him from having any contact. And everybody believed that, he could not have any contact with Jaylen, and she testified at a previous hearing, and I submitted the unofficial transcript of that, she even said, if he would have shown up, so she worked at the daycare where Jaylen would go to daycare. If he would have shown up there, he would have been arrested. If he would have showed up at the house, he would have been arrested. She was going to enforce that. And my client believed that she was going to enforce it. So about a year goes by with him under the threat of being criminally charged, incarcerated if he ever tried to see Jaylen. He finds out that the restraining order had been lifted. It was gone, the protection order. And so he immediately contacts them, and they come up here. This was about a week before Jaylen's birthday, last October. There's, you see emails going back and forth where, they were saying, why don't you, get to know her a little bit, and then we'll transport her down there. Just don't come up here and take her, because he was going to come up here and take her. He had the perfect right to do that. But they talked him into leaving her here for a period of time while they transitioned, and they had a birthday party for her coming up. In the meantime, they run out. That was all deception. They run out and they get this emergency protection order filed, an emergency restraining order, preventing him from taking Jaylen to his grandmother's house. He was here with Teresa Ludwig, and they were going to his grandmother's house, going to do exactly what he's been telling the court he was going to do. And so here we are. We're going on 10 months. And we've been asking to move this along. It hasn't happened, and we're here for trial. So I'm overwhelmed, and we'll present the case that my client, moving forward, should have custody of his daughter. He has constitutional rights to have custody of his daughter, and she's not endangered. She's not any of the elements, all the elements required under the RCW 2609-040 he can provide. Has he provided medical care for her? No, because he can't get custody of her. He can't get, you can't take her to a doctor if you can't physically take her to a doctor. But he has doctors lined up. He'll tell you that all of her shots were up to date when she was born and when he got custody when she was young. And they have a daycare just down the street from Teresa Ludwig's house. So she'll go to daycare when he goes to work. And then when he comes home, he'll have Jaylen and care for her, and they have this plan, and we can't get to square one. So here we are at a trial. So, with regards to, they want to say he, needs anger management and drug and alcohol evaluation with input from them, and all these things. So that's their case. That's their case. If they under the discovery rules, if they wanted to have him submit to any kind of testing, they could have done that. They absolutely had the right. There's not been any request by them whereby they said, okay, we want him to have this testing with input from us at this facility. He indicated he would have complied with that, but there's been no request. They want to say, he has a drug issue without providing any proof to you, without setting up any kind of drug testing evaluation, and then to blame it on him because he said, I will do that if you pay for it. Mr. Ludwig has all the financial resources to have this case be in the position it is, where I get 500 pages or so of ER 904 docs right before trial. My client doesn't. He's a young man, just starting out, not making a whole lot. They want to say, well, he doesn't pay for this, that. He spends his money on other stuff. But if Mr. Ludwig wanted him to do, testing, they should have paid for it. And he would have complied. That's always been his position. So they want to convict him of having these issues without ever providing the proof that they could have obtained had they wanted to pay for it. They want to say, well, you didn't do it, and therefore you must be guilty of those things. So I ask your honor to be cognizant of those type of issues. My client is a young man. He's a good dad. Jalen is very attached to him. They have a great relationship that needs to be maintained. So we're going to ask that, under the emergency part of this case, we asked for them to move it along. They never did. They fought us on that. And here we are. So I think the court will find that my client can provide as set forth in the statute. They have to prove under clear convincing evidence that the parent of the minor is not willing or able. He's willing and able to exercise parenting functions under 2609-040. He's willing and able. You'll find that he's willing and able to do that, so he gets custody. He gets her back. This matter gets dismissed, and it summarily happens that his daughter goes back to him at this point. And so that's what we're asking today, that the court return Jalen to his father, to her father. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Agnostu. All right, we'll turn the time to Ms. Winkles. If you'd like to call your first witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. I've actually been asked by the GL just to wait a couple minutes for her. So I am going to call my first witness, Kelly Crape, to the stand.
Thank you. Ms. Winkles?
Okay. And Ms. Crape, how are you related to the father, Jaden Ludwig, in this action?
So Jaden Ludwig's father is my long-term partner.
Okay. And is that Kai Ludwig?
Yes.
And how long have you and Kai been together?
It'll be 11 years next February.
Okay. So aside from the absence of the marriage license, would you consider yourself the grandmother of this child?
Yes.
Okay. And tell me, let's kind of go back in time. Can you tell me what you know about at the birth of this child? Where did the child live?
So from what I'm aware of, the child lived.
I'm going to object without a foundation, Your Honor.
And I can ask it a different way.
Sustain.
When was the child first introduced to you?
The child was first physically introduced to me the Christmas before they came to live with us. However, I was made aware of her through another friend of mine and a witness.
That's hearsay of some type.
Well, the objection is noted, it's overruled. She indicated that she became aware of the child's existence. So I'll allow that.
And so you became aware of the child's existence prior to or after you became aware of the child's existence to the time they lived live with you. About how much interaction did you have with the child?
Not much, because so we met Jalen that Christmas, and by March they were living in our house. So I had gotten a couple pictures and that type of thing. Like I said before, I wasn't aware of Jalen's existence, but as soon as we were, we made attempts to be in her life.
Okay. You said Christmas to March. What year was that?
2021, I believe.
So they moved in, Jalen and Jaden moved into your home in March of 2021. Is that correct?
Jaden, and Caitlin moved into our home. Yes. And
who was Caitlin?
Caitlin was Jaden's girlfriend at the time.
Okay. And now during that time period, or I guess let me kind of back up. How long did all three of them live with you?
Not very long. Jaden was out, I believe. So the day that the restraining order was put into place, or a week before the restraining order was put into place, we asked him to leave. So it was like a month and a half, maybe.
Okay, so he lived with you for about a month and a half.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's kind of go back to that month and a half. Were you working during that month and a half?
I was, yes.
Okay, and was Kai working?
Yes.
Okay, how about Caitlin?
Yes.
Okay, and what about Jaden?
Jaden had a hard time getting a job. He went through a temp agency. So we would drop him off at the temp agency every morning and pick him up from the temp agency every evening. But it turns out that
Object.
Basis.
Well, at this point, it's non-responsive to a question. She's answered the question.
I think the question was about whether was he working? And she was explaining that. So the objection is not overruled. You can continue.
His father had gotten COVID. This was during the time where COVID had been pretty bad, and he had gotten COVID. So we had to call and notify everybody living in the house. And the temp agency said that Jaden had no longer worked there.
So the objection as to hearsay is sustained.
Okay, did you ever discuss with Jaden the fact that he hadn't worked at the temp agency in a long period of time?
Yes.
Okay, and what did he say? What was the conversation? Give us the gist of the conversation.
The gist of the conversation was that the places at the temp agency had him working, hurt his feet or his back, and that he just needed some time to hang out with his friends, and that he would be getting a different job.
Okay. Did you ever find out from him directly how long he actually worked for the temp agency?
No.
Okay. And about what part of that month and a half do you have actual knowledge of him going to work, of him actually having a job? Do you have any actual knowledge?
No.
And during that time, that month and a half he lived with you, tell me, was he drinking, using drugs, or doing anything of that nature?
Yes, Jaden, we have a strict no drug policy at our house. We have a foster child now, but before we don't allow it at our house. And Jaden was caught numerous times on my back porch smoking marijuana.
Okay. And now, did you guys UA him? Did you ever get a drug test from him?
No, because he was caught in the act of doing it. So.
Okay. And he's been UA'd, to the best of your knowledge, he's been UA'd for this case.
Yes.
Okay. And
did you say yes, has or has not been tested?
He has.
Thank you.
And so I'm going to ask you now if you can turn to, and let me get my, bear with me. May have made this too big. Can you turn to exhibit 44? Or this is the only one I didn't have labeled. Apologies for that delay. Do you recognize this?
Yes, this was the drug test of Jaden Mullig.
Okay. And it looks like he's negative for everything except for marijuana. Were you surprised when you saw that?
No, not at all.
Have you ever seen him do any other types of drugs?
I have not physically seen him, but when he was younger, he was brought back to our house by a police officer.
Basis of objection.
Foundation. Yeah. Is this something somebody told her, or is this something? I mean,
the objection is noted. It's overruled. So you can go ahead and continue, and you can renew an objection if appropriate.
He was brought back to my house by a police officer who stated that Jaden
sustained as to hearsay.
So instead of so he was brought back. Had he been arrested?
He was brought back to my house. He had been jumping off a bridge onto a lake. He was clearly under the influence of a stimulant of some sort.
Object. This is all apparently hearsay information she's getting from somebody.
Objection is overruled.
Was he arrested?
No.
Okay. Did he have to do community service?
No.
Okay. Was there any sort of punishment at that point for being brought back in that state?
Yeah, he was grounded.
Okay. Okay. So, and that was when he was a minor, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And aside from that time, tell me, how long have you personally been aware of his using marijuana?
Since right before he left our house, when he was a minor, he didn't want to follow our rules. And that was one of them, is the use of marijuana. From then on, I've known that he's used marijuana.
And obviously, because I'm asking for your personal knowledge, given what you hear, what you see, those things, not what somebody has told you, about how many times does, and I know there's a lot of marijuana that I don't fully understand. I guess there's edibles and there's things you smoke and things. So based on your personal knowledge, about how many times per day would he utilize some form of marijuana?
Objection, foundation. I'm wondering what she would be basing, this kind of testimony on.
Objections overruled. She can answer.
I know that at least once a day while he was with us that he would be utilizing marijuana.
And where would he be smoking that marijuana or taking that marijuana?
So because we wouldn't allow it at our house, oftentimes he would go for a walk. And then when he thought I was asleep or that he thought we weren't in the house, he would do it on our back porch.
Okay. And where was the child at during the times that he was using marijuana?
Either in my custody or in the bedroom or running around the living room with somebody else watching her.
Okay. And when you say in the bedroom, whose bedroom was she in?
The bedroom that they shared with Caitlin, himself, and Jalen.
Okay. And in that bedroom, would the child be, so if he were out smoking marijuana, the child would be in that bedroom alone or with Caitlin or?
Most likely either with Caitlin or alone in her crib.
Okay. And tell me, with your personal knowledge, about, so dad doesn't have a job. What is he doing during the day when he lives with you?
So if he wasn't pretending to go to work, he would sleep in until 10 or 11, leaving Jalen alone in the crib, just sitting there waiting for him to get up. Then he'd get up, he would pass along Jalen to somebody else, sit and play on his phone a lot or play video games or run to the store for snacks.
Okay. And was he collecting EBT at that time?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And did that EBT, about how much of that on average would you say was utilized for the child? So for
Objection.
And I can reword that.
Okay.
Okay. That EBT, can you tell me, was he using the EBT card to buy formula, to buy child food or kid food or infant food? What was he using the money for?
So that was actually a big point of argument that we had a lot in our house because we were a pretty large family and they were eating a pretty large portion of the food. So he would get the EBT card and I would say, like, you need to come grocery shopping with us because we have to buy food for the house that you guys have eaten. So they would spend about $100 at the grocery store when I would take them. And then the rest of the money Jaden said he needed for himself and would use the rest on snacks at the little convenience store that was near our house.
Okay. And were those snacks for him and the child or just for him?
For him. Sometimes he would buy her candy or something along that line, but nothing substantial.
Okay.
And I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
And most of the time it was 2 weeks after getting the EBT food stamps that it would be gone. So then we would be supplying for the rest of the month.
Okay. And is the EBT the only thing he supplied to you during the time you lived in the house?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me how many times have you personally seen Jaden change the diaper of Jalen?
I have never witnessed Jaden changing her diaper.
Have you ever witnessed her have a dirty diaper while in the presence of her father?
Yes.
And tell me what would happen on some of those occasions. You can just pick out one or two that you remember.
He would either delegate that to Caitlin or somebody else living in the house, or I would notice it and just change it myself to make sure that she was clean.
Was there any times that you were concerned due to the length of time the child was in a dirty diaper?
Yes. So on those times when we realized that Jaden was sleeping in until 10 or on his phone in his bedroom till 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning and Jalen was in her room, we come to find out that she was not being changed when she woke up in the morning. So she was sitting in a wet diaper the whole time in there.
For how many hours would you say?
3 or 4 hours.
Okay. And then who would eventually change Jalen?
Myself or Caitlin or Holly.
Okay. During the time that he lived with you, did you ever personally witness the father bathing the child?
No.
During the time that you lived with him, how many times did the father bathe himself that you are personally aware of?
Not many, maybe once or maybe twice. It's very, very, very rare.
And was that an issue in your house?
Yes.
And can you tell me some of the conversations between you and Jaden about his hygiene?
explained to Jaden that when you live in a house of our size, that it's really important that there's so many people in the space that we're trying to provide for everybody, that he needs to be clean. He needs to clean up after himself and make sure that his sheets are taken care of and that he changes his clothes and brushes his teeth. And this sets an example for the rest of the children that were living in our house at the time, which was my younger son and his daughter.
And did he change his ways? Did he start bathing?
No.
Okay. And just quickly, he came to your house due to homelessness. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's kind of move on to the child herself. So at some point, did you notice that there was anything wrong with the child?
Yes, I actually noticed Jalen was severely delayed when they were living at our house. I urged Caitlin and Jaden both to get her evaluated at the Progress Center, which is a center that helps children meet their developmental needs. They never did. I believe Caitlin put in a referral to do so, but never followed through on it. I urged them many times to follow through, but because I wasn't the legal guardian, I couldn't do anything to help her at the time.
Okay. And did Dad, when you were speaking to Dad about this issue, did you see him take any affirmative steps whatsoever?
No, he basically just would always agree to whatever I said and was like, yep, I'll do it. Yep, we'll do this. And I understand it's important, but then there was no follow through.
Okay. And at some point you were able to get this child care, correct?
Yes.
And do you remember the month that was where you were first able to take the child in?
So I believe in June, after after we had signed the paper that gave me rights to seek medical and all that kind of thing for Jalen. My first thing was to get her evaluated at the Progress Center. They started coming out often to the center where Jalen and I would both meet with them. They would work with me and her together. So they would show me the signs that they want her to be using and how they want her to start to communicate with us. And then they would work one-on-one with her. And then we'd meet at the end and we'd go over all the things that they worked on. And she would give me like homework so that we could work on what she wanted us to work on. I would then make a copy of that and give that to her teacher at the time, so all of us could be on the same page of how we are expecting and needing her to grow and the milestones we want her to meet.
Okay. And when you took her in to the doctor, what health concern or what health issues did they discover?
They discovered Jalen.
I'm going to object to hearsay.
And I'll have her turn to the exhibit. It's already been ER 904 admitted. Okay, so tell me, so is this the evaluation at the Progress Center, correct?
Yes.
And it says medical diagnosis not applicable up there, but then we go back in to the medical history and it says that she has a developmental disorder of speech and language. So tell me about, I guess, number one, how old was she at this point in July of 2021?
She was about 18 months old.
And how many words did she speak at 18 months old?
None.
And I know that you do this for a living. What is about, in your opinion, the average amount of words that an 18-month-old speaks?
At this point in time, she should at least have a speech vocabulary of 50 words and beginning to.
The objection is sustained.
Okay. And going through this, it essentially is these treatment notes are treating her to get back up to the level of language that they would expect to see of somebody of her age group. Is that correct? Correct. Okay. And can you tell me, was it ever discovered why she was so far regressed speech-wise?
Yes. Jalen had severe fluid behind her ears to the point where she had very little hearing. So any of the words that we were trying to get her to say, she could not hear us say, so she couldn't mimic them. So in order to get her further along in this process, we actually had to have her have surgery on her ears to relieve the fluid from behind her ears and put tubes in.
Okay. And that was the insertion of the myringotomy tubes?
Yes. Okay.
And how long after she moved into the house did you notice that something was not right with her hearing?
It was about a week or two after she moved in to the house that I got to know her a little bit and realized that it wasn't just because she was being shy that she wasn't talking, and noticed that when you talk to her or call her name, she didn't tilt her head or turn to you or acknowledge those things. To me, that's a sign that I probably need to be taking this child to the doctor to have her ears examined or have her looked at to make sure that everything was okay.
Okay. And dad never did that, correct? And was she vaccinated when you took her?
She had minimal vaccinations, nothing up to date so that she could be enrolled into a daycare or a preschool setting.
Okay. And so she's not vaccinated. Her ears have been neglected. How many times a week did you have to work with her from that first diagnosis at the Progress Center until they discharged her for being on level? About how many days?
Every single day, many times a day. Everything we did with Jalen was to get her up to speed. If we were eating, we'd talk about the color of the food. We'd sign the food to her. We would make sure she's looking at us face on so she could read our lips and those type of things. So everything we did was a conscious effort to make sure that she was gaining those skills.
And did dad involve himself in any of that?
No, because I could not get him to take her to the Progress Center to get her on track until he was actually gone and we had the custody of her.
Okay. Did anybody ever reach out to him and ask him if he wanted to be involved in her care and development?
At one point in time, Kai reached out to him.
Object.
And I can ask that in Kai's testimony. That's fine.
Okay.
The objection's overruled.
Okay. So, but did dad ever show up to daycare?
No.
Okay. Did dad ever call daycare and obtain records prior to this case being filed?
Not
I'm
once.
going to object. I mean, there's no foundation how she would know if he called daycare or not.
Kelly, where do you work? Oh, sorry.
I actually
Hold
worked.
on a second. So there's an objection. The objection's overruled. Go ahead.
Kelly, where do you work?
I up until about 5 months ago, I worked at We Care Daycare and Preschool.
And what was the daycare that Jalen Sloan attended?
We Care Daycare and Preschool.
Okay. And so would it be fair to say that it's a rather small daycare?
Yes.
Okay. And when somebody calls, are all the staff members made aware?
Yes.
Okay. And during your time there with the child, did the father ever call and inquire about her?
No.
Okay. And any of the testimony, or I guess any of the declarants that are going to come in today and give testimony that had worked there as well, had they ever informed you that father was calling and seeking information?
No.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, did father ever obtain any medical records from the facility prior to the start of this litigation? The child?
Not to my knowledge.
I'm going to object.
She indicated not to her knowledge, so overruled.
Okay. So about how long did it take you working every day with her to get her?
It was about 6 months of working with her. I still work with her every day, just so she doesn't slip back or doesn't gain those steps that she needs to. But it was about 6 months we were in treatment for. Then the specialist agreed that Jalen was caught up and she could just maintain her regular preschool schedule.
Okay. And if I can have you turn to Exhibit 12.
Yes, this was the, I believe this is the discharge paper of the Progress Center of when she met all of her developmental needs.
Okay. And so it says services are discontinued March 24th, 2022.
Mhm.
And when do you remember when you enrolled her in there?
I don't remember the day I enrolled her.
Okay. And I believe it's on Exhibit 8. But in any event, so she was discharged. So she was by March of 2022, she was at level. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And it says visit number 1 is July 23rd, 2021. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in a little under a year, the child started off not speaking at all, had surgery, started speaking, and eventually was discharged because she was at level. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And currently, before I go to there, now if somebody didn't have money, would this still be available? Let me ask that a different way. Did you have to pay any money for any of this treatment that Jalen received?
Not at all.
Okay. And why didn't you have to pay any money for it?
Because Jalen has state medical, and the state medical paid for all visits from the Progress Center and to have her tubes put in her ear and any follow-up care.
Okay. And how did you find out she had state medical?
Jaden actually, when he moved into our house, had gotten her on state medical.
Okay. But then it was your testimony, just so I can understand, he got her on state medical, but he never took her to the doctor during the time.
No.
And so it wouldn't have cost Jaden any money at all to take her to these appointments, correct?
Correct.
And nothing for the surgery?
Nothing.
Okay. And did he go sit with her during the surgery? Did he show up at the hospital?
No.
Okay. Did he call the
Well, I'm
hospital?
going to object, Your Honor. Foundation, I mean, during this period of time, there was a restraining order against him.
So the objection is noted, overruled.
Kelly, the restraining order that we're talking about, the no contact one, which I'd get to in a second. Can you tell me who is restrained? Who's the restrained party and who is the protected party?
I was the protected party and Jaden was the restrained party. I made it very clear when getting the restraining order that I did not want it with Jalen on it. So therefore that in the case that Jaden wanted to speak or see, that he could reach out to anyone in our family to maintain contact with Jalen.
Okay, so the no contact order was just between you and Jaden.
Correct.
The child wasn't on it.
No.
Okay. Was Kai on it?
No.
Okay, so dad.
Hold on, I have to interject myself. There was a message sent in the chat, and I'll just strongly remind everybody not to comment on any of the testimony. To do so is wholly inappropriate. So, Mr. Jaden, to enter in something in the chat and sharing that with everybody, wholly inappropriate. Don't do that. You can communicate with Mr. Agnostu and send it directly to him, but definitely don't try to influence the court by making any comment about the testimony. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Winkles.
Okay, I'm going to have you turn to Exhibit 5 rather than just keep asking the question.
I believe this is the restraining order.
Okay. And it's State of Washington, Jaden Thomas Ludwig, from 6/21/2021. Is that about the right date? Do you remember?
Yes.
And it says, you are hereby ordered to have no contact with Kelly Craig.
Yes.
And you are also ordered not to go within 1,000 feet of.
Yes.
Okay. So that's your house, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anywhere on this document, does it say We Care Daycare?
No.
Okay. Anywhere on this document, does it say Kai Ludwig?
No.
Okay. What hospital did the child get her ears done at?
She got them done at Dornbecker's in Portland.
Okay. Dornbecker's does not appear in this order either, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it states that there's no feet requirement to be away from you, correct? There's only a feet requirement to be away from the house. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was just not supposed to contact you directly, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Or come to the residence.
Okay. Or come to the residence.
Yeah.
When the child was at the hospital having surgery, who was there? Who was present for that?
Myself and Kai.
Okay. Did you ever go to the bathroom? Did you ever leave Kai there with the child alone at any point?
Yes, of course.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, did Jaden utilize that time to see his child?
No.
When the child is currently 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And where is the child enrolled in school now?
She's still at We Care Daycare and Preschool.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, has the child ever been picked up by dad from We Care Daycare?
No.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, has dad ever been put on the list to be notified prior to this litigation of anything concerning the child at We Care Daycare?
So that's a hard one because that's not the way that works. They contact the primary person on the account in case of emergency. So if something were to happen, they would contact the first person on the list. If that person doesn't respond, they go to the next person on the list. So I always respond. So there's no need to in cases of emergency, contact anybody else.
Was he on the list?
Yes.
And who put him on the list?
When Jalen was first enrolled at We Care, Jalen was enrolled under Jaden Ludwig, so he has his own account there. And by the standards that we had at the center, that once a parental parent is put on, they may never be removed off an account. So just because Jaden wasn't in the home anymore doesn't mean he can be removed off an account. So Jaden had his own account, which gave him access to view any records of Jalen's, to make phone calls to the center and talk to the director about Jalen or her teachers. Anything regarding Jalen, he had full access to.
Okay. Let's kind of go back just a little bit. When you asked him to leave because you found out he wasn't working, how did you end up with the child remaining in your residence?
We told Jaden that it was time that he went and figured out what was important in his life and to get his life together, maybe go get a job. We'd hoped that he would stay close so that he could maintain some sort of communication with Jalen. We then pulled up a document that we found online. Jaden and I sat down and filled this out together. We had Taylor and Caitlin witness us together filling this out. I took his opinion into consideration when we filled it out. We took it to the notary, and Jaden and I both signed it in front of a notary with witnesses from Taylor and Caitlin. And then I bought Jaden a ticket because his wishes were to go live with his grandmother. So I bought Jaden a ticket and gave him $10 in cash and told him that he could call anytime. He could come see Jalen anytime. And we put him on the train, and he went to stay there.
Okay, and can you go to Exhibit 4? Is this the exhibit that you're talking about, the thing you pulled up online and signed?
Yes.
Okay. And it says that cause for attack, and obviously the legality of this I won't go into, but in order to properly care for Jalen, you're going to ensure the nutrition, health, shelter, and physical safety of the child.
Yes.
Okay. And it looks like he did sign this. Is that correct?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And it looks like it creates, and again, the legality of it is obviously not in play here, but according to the terms of it, it appears to create a 6-month guardianship. Is that what you understood?
Yes.
Okay. And did you talk with Mr. Dayton, Mr. Ludwig, about what would happen after the 6 months?
He was supposed to come back and get her at the beginning of January.
Okay. And where was he going to take her then?
Well, the hopes was that he would have his stuff together and have a place for her to be and that type of thing. That's why he left without her.
Okay. And when he left, did he leave? You said you gave him $10. Did he leave any money for the child?
No.
Okay. Did he buy the child any clothes or diapers or any sort of essentials when he left?
I'm going to object to the leading nature of the question.
Sustained as to form.
Did he purchase any items for Jalen prior to his leaving the home?
No, he never purchased any items for her.
During that initial 6-month time, did you ever receive any sort of financial support, be it cash, be it Venmo, Zelle, or any other benefit in kind from Mr. Ludwig?
I'm going to object again to the leading nature of the question.
The objection's overruled.
I have never received any financial assistance from Jaden at all.
During that initial 6-month period, something happened, correct? Something happened which kind of took this from him leaving and going on the train to now there being a no contact order. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell me how long after he left was there an incident that changed everything?
It was a couple weeks after he left.
Okay. And can you walk me through what happened?
Yes. Our youngest child, or our youngest daughter, Holly, it was her graduation, and we invited Teresa Ludwig, Bill Ludwig, and Jaden Ludwig up to be a part of that graduation. Teresa was supposed to help me do some things to get ready for the graduation, and Jaden was supposed to be there and visiting with Jalen. It was a great time for him to, come back. It had been 2 weeks, so Teresa never came to the house, but Jaden came to the house. And in that time, I left Jalen in his care, and he was in the living room with Jalen. And I was in the bathroom doing my hair. And it had been about 10 or 15 minutes. I heard a large crash in the living room. So I went into the living room, and Jalen had pulled over the CDs out of the cabinets. And she was just sitting there in the midst of all the CDs, and I couldn't find Jaden. He was nowhere around. So I called Jaden, I called his girlfriend, Caitlin, I called his grandma, and I finally got a hold of him and was told that he was down at where his grandmother was. And I was upset. I told them that he can't pick and choose when he wants to be a father, that if he was there watching Jalen so I could get ready, that he needed to either tell me he was needing to leave or stay there and continue to watch his daughter. He got upset with me, and I got hung up on. I continued to get ready, got Jalen ready for the graduation. And then I went outside because Teresa had came and
let me stop you. Teresa is who?
Teresa is Kai's mother and Jaden's grandmother.
Okay.
She came to make sure I'm not sure why she came back, but she told me that Jaden was upset, that Caitlin was saying all kinds of things about the way I was taking care of Jalen, and I said, I think there's been a miscommunication and a misunderstanding. However, this is Holly's graduation, and we all just need to figure this out so we can all be there to support Holly. When I was trying to talk to Teresa and having a decent conversation with her, Jaden came around the corner and proceeded to call me very vulgar names. And I told him he needed to leave the property if he was going to behave in that manner. And he refused to leave the property. And I asked him again to leave the property, and he reached out and punched me in my mouth.
Okay, before he punched you, you said that he was calling you vulgar names. Were there any children present at the time that those names were being called?
No children present. Jalen was in the house at the door, so I'm sure that she was close by, but she was not outside. But she was.
Can you tell me? So I know that you're in court and you don't want to curse, but I think it's important that to have the court understand what the types of words that were used. So what was he saying to you?
He called me a cunt many times and a bitch, and told me that I don't deserve to have children, and that all I was trying to do is turn his daughter against him.
Okay. And that was how many weeks after he signed the order giving you the 6-month custody?
Roughly about 2 weeks.
Okay. And were the police called?
Yes, immediately.
If I can have you turn to Exhibit 39, do you remember who called the police?
I instructed someone at my house to call the police.
Okay. And is it fair to say that Taylor Crape, Caitlin Boone, Teresa Ludwig, you and Jaden were all present there?
Yes.
Was there anybody else that I haven't named present there aside from Deputy Pattison?
The grandfather, Bill Ludwig, was sitting in his vehicle.
Okay.
And I had Cameron Cannon was in the house, and Ethan, my son, was in the house.
Okay. And if you can turn to page, you have to use the bait stamps for this one. If you can turn to what has been bait stamped as 551, can you tell me what's going on in that picture? It appears you're holding your lip out. Why are you doing that?
Yes, the police officer was taking a picture of the injury caused by when Jaden hit me in the mouth.
Okay. And can you show your hand? Was it open, closed? What did his hand look like when it was hitting you in the mouth?
It was like this.
Okay. And did he what precipitated that? Was there, because I'm hearing he's calling you names, and then what leads from calling names to hitting?
He came from around the corner, from probably 15, 20 feet back, started yelling and cussing at me. I asked him to leave. He proceeded to get closer, asked him to leave again, and he hit me. There was not much in between that.
Okay. And did he use all of his force, or did he, I mean, if you can explain how hard it was, because it looks like you're injured, but it doesn't look like you're, bloodied and bruised.
Yeah. I don't think he used all of his force, but I stepped back. So he connected with me, but I don't think it was full connection, but he definitely, yeah. If I would have not stepped away from him and tried to protect myself, it probably would have been much worse.
Okay. And what happened after he hits you? What stops that altercation happening? Did anything stop it?
Yes. Taylor Crape and Caitlin Boone stepped in and blocked him, and he started fighting with them, and they both took him to the ground.
Okay. And what do you mean they took him to the ground?
In the process of trying to get him away from me, they were pushing him away from me, and he tripped and fell over a chicken coop that we had in our front yard, and he went to the ground.
Okay. So was he still advancing on you when they pulled him off?
Yes.
Okay. So they essentially protected you, pulled him to the ground, correct?
Yes.
And then there's a statement by Deputy Pattison, which I'm going to ask him about, but I just want to see if this is your memory as well. It said that Kelly said Ludwig's grandmother witnessed the assault, and she was pulling Ludwig's hair during this as an attempt to get him away as well.
Yes.
So the grandmother was also pulling Jaden's hair to get him off of you. Is that correct?
No, not to get him off of me. So when Taylor and Caitlin and Jaden were on the ground, in order to separate them, she was down there pulling on Jaden's hair to get him separated from them.
Okay. And has your testimony ever changed in that? So I should ask first. He was arrested at the scene, correct?
No, he fled from the scene.
Oh, he fled from the scene. When did they find him?
They were made aware that Jaden and his grandparents were made aware that police were being called, and they left.
Well, I'm going to object. There's no foundation.
I think the question was, when was he arrested? So you can answer that question, but I'll sustain the objection.
He was arrested that same day at the hotel that they were staying at.
Okay. And did he know when he left? had anyone verbalized out loud that the police were being called?
Yes.
Okay. And about how long after that verbalization that the police were being called did Jaden leave the scene?
Very, very shortly. So as soon as Caitlin and Taylor and Jaden were separated, I instructed one of them to call the police. And as soon as that was heard, they got in the vehicle and left.
At any point on that day, did you put any hands on Jaden prior to?
Well, I'm going to object. It's already leading, but
I'm trying to word this differently.
I'll allow the question to be asked, and then you can
Okay.
proceed with that.
At any point, did you throw the first punch, make the first touch? At any point, did you put your hands on Jaden prior to Jaden putting his hands on you?
No, I did not.
At any time, did you get into Jaden's face in a way that was aggressive that would have caused a reasonable person to fear you?
When I was asking him to get off my property, I was pretty loud at that point in time, but I was not in his face. He was still coming at me. So that was the only time I was loud and yelling at him he needs to leave the property.
Okay. And when you were telling him to leave the property, what was that in response to? Why were you telling him that?
Because he was coming at me, cussing me, calling me the vulgar names.
Okay. When he was coming at you, was his fist raised? Were any body parts in motion, or was he just walking towards you?
Oh no, he was like very quickly walking towards me, very aggressively. And I was pretty scared at that point in time. That's why I asked him to leave.
And about how far from you did he actually get before he hit you? When you said you have to leave, about how close to you did he get to your person?
The first time he was probably about 15 or 20 feet away from me. When I first asked him to leave the property, and he kept on approaching, I asked him again. And right after I asked him that second time is when I was hit.
Okay. So he just kept walking up.
Yeah.
Okay. So at some point he's arrested, correct?
Correct.
And a no contact order is put in place.
Yes.
Okay. And after it was put in place, did you hear anything about it? Did you hear anything else about the no contact order?
I did not.
Okay. Were you ever called by the prosecutors and asked to testify, or anybody send you a subpoena to testify?
Many times. I got a subpoena many times to testify. And on the subpoena, it says, please call this number before the day. And I called the number and we were not set to testify.
Okay.
So we never went to trial with it.
Okay. And what happened, to the best of your knowledge, what happened to that case?
I believe it was dropped. When I went to find out about it, it was dropped due to the fact that they couldn't find my witnesses.
Okay, so
Changes to the hearsay.
Okay. I'm going to have you go to exhibit.
I do not believe I've seen this order before.
Okay, so exhibit 14 is an order rescinding the no contact order. So you've not seen this. This is the one that takes the contact order away, drops it.
So yes, I actually went to the courthouse and got this order myself because I was not made aware of it when it was dropped. So this is I believe the order that I went to the prosecutor's office myself and got.
Okay. And this was dropped on 8/8/22. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And let's see. Your Honor, I'd ask to admit exhibit 14 into evidence. It's not part of that ER 904.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
14 is admitted.
And Your Honor, I'd also ask to admit exhibit 5 into evidence. That's the no contact order itself.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
5 is admitted.
Okay, so do you know, did they give you any information, the prosecutor, about the reason for dismissing that case? Did you ever receive a pleading or anything of that nature explaining the dismissal?
No, I did
I'm
not.
going to object to it calls for a hearsay.
The objection is overruled.
I wasn't asking her what it said. I just wanted to know if she had received it. So it's dismissed on 8/8/2022. When was the next time you heard from Jaden?
The very next time I heard from Jaden was early October
of 2022.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me the last time. So we talked about you getting punched in the face, and that occurred in what month again? Was it
June
of 2021?
Mm-hmm.
From June of 2021 to August 8th of 2022, how much contact did you personally have with Jaden?
0.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, how often during that time, and you may not know, and that's fine. How often did you personally overhear your partner Kai speaking to Jaden or texting Jaden or anything you have personal knowledge of?
I have personal knowledge of him texting and agreeing to meet in Salem. At least he agreed to meet in Salem once, and I believe I can recall that there had been at least 2 messages back and forth. Again, because I was on a restraining order, I didn't ask a lot of questions to be part of that.
And in that time from June 2021 to August 2022, Jaden had no visitation with the child at all, correct?
Correct.
And after it was dropped from August to October, so there's no contact order, it's not in place anymore. How much visitation did he have then?
None. There was no contact.
And the 2 weeks where he had moved out prior to the no contact order being put in place, how often did he call or see the child?
I would call him so she could talk, or he would call his girlfriend and ask questions, but it was maybe once or twice that they had spoken on the phone.
Okay. And so now let's get into this minor guardianship. So you filed the minor guardianship, correct?
Correct.
This might be a good time, Ms. Winkles, for our morning recess. So
Okay.
let's do that. So we're at 10:35. That puts us to 10:50. So we'll reconvene at 10:50. I'm just going to turn off my camera and mute. I'll keep the Zoom up and going.
And just so everyone's aware, this is my longest witness. The rest will be much, much shorter. So I hope that makes everybody a little happy. She's the longest one.
All right. We'll be back in 15. Thank you. So Ms. Winkles.
Okay. So you essentially, the no contact order was dropped, and the next time you saw Mr. Ludwig was when?
The beginning of October, we received a call. We were out birthday shopping for Jalen's birthday and received a call from Teresa Ludwig asking if we were in town because Jaden wanted to come pick up his daughter.
Okay. And how did you react to that?
Not good, because we were very, very, taken by surprise because there hadn't been any communication of a plan for reunification or anything like that. At this point in time, Jalen had no idea who he was, except for the pictures we had showing her throughout the time that he had been gone and talking about her, but she had no idea who he was. So I was scared for Jalen. I didn't know what progress he'd made. I didn't know if she would be safe. I didn't know any of that. So it was quite a shock to us.
And so Jaden was how old when you filed the petition?
23, 22, 23,
Okay.
I think.
And Jaylin, how old was she when you filed the petition for minor guardianship?
This was right before her 3rd birthday.
Okay. So right before, so she's 3. Of that 3 years, how many years, I guess, has she had no contact with her father? So what proportion of her life has she had no contact with her father?
A little over 1.5 years.
About half her life.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you filed this, and you didn't have counsel at that time, correct? When you initially.
Correct. I could not afford counsel.
Okay. And how did you end up affording counsel, or how did you pay counsel?
So
I don't believe that's relevant.
It was in your open.
Yeah, I think based on the opening statements, I'll allow it.
We paid our initial payment with some taxes money that we had saved up. Additionally, we have pulled out of both of our 401k accounts. We have taken out loans and maxed out our credit cards.
Okay. And so you, before counsel and now with counsel, you file and you understand that under this minor guardianship act for the emergency and then the minor, which you both filed, that you have to have a basis for it. Tell me in your own words why you filed, what you believe the basis is for minor guardianship over Jalen.
I don't believe at this point in time, if Jalen was returned to Jaden, he could maintain her safety. He has shown us no progress at all that he can maintain a house, maintain a job, care for her on his own. He was, couldn't change a diaper or bathe her. I had to walk him through that. You can't give toddlers round hot dogs. You have to cut them up. And just those tiny little things that he didn't know. Even as of last month, she came home with a sunburn, and I had to remind him that even though you put sunblock on once in the morning, if they're in the swimming pool and you're outside all day, you have to reapply it. He doesn't have the skills to protect her or take care of her. I don't fully believe that Jaden himself wants Jalen back. I think that his grandmother has a lot to do with this.
Your Honor.
So the objection is overruled. It's her opinion as to why she filed.
I believe that Jaden's grandmother thinks that Jaden should have custody of his daughter at all costs, no matter what it is, and that if he falters, she'll take care of her. I don't think that Jalen will get a proper education or proper medical care, because when I got her, she hadn't had those things. And there was a time where they lived with Teresa, with Jalen, and still hadn't had those things. So those are my fears.
Okay, so do you believe that the father is capable of maintaining a loving and stable and consistent and nurturing relationship with the child?
I believe that Jaden loves his child. I do not believe that if given the opportunity, he wouldn't leave her again. So I don't think that he would maintain that. But I do believe he loves her, yes.
How many hours has he spent alone with that child in the last year?
Maybe 8.
8 hours in the last year.
Yeah, maybe.
And when he comes for visitation, is there somebody else with him?
The vast majority of the time, yes.
And who would that be?
He either brings his girlfriend Michelle or his grandmother Teresa.
Okay. And is the father ever late to visitation?
Very often.
Okay. And so he's been having visits since October of 2022, correct?
Yes.
How, and this is it's in the trial brief and in your notes, but about how often is he more than half an hour late?
75% of the time.
About how often is he more than an hour late?
I would say about 50% of the time.
Okay. How many visits in an average month does he miss entirely?
In the beginning, it was probably about 2 a month. Now it's probably still about 2 a month, but he's getting more visits now. So he's still missing about 2 a month. He, in the month of September, he won't have 2 full weekends where he has chosen not to visit her.
And what do you mean he won't have 2 full weekends where he's not visiting her? What do you mean by that?
So I got a text message from him last weekend telling me that he has made plans on those weekends, so he will not be able to be up and come to those visits.
And what is this text about? Who's this between? First, let me say, who is the dark bubble and who is the light bubble?
So Kai is the dark bubble and Jaden is the one that has no picture on it.
Okay, and are you involved in this conversation as well?
Yes, this is the conversation. We have a group text between the 3 of us just to make sure that there was nobody's not aware of any communication that needs to be had.
Okay, and so what is essentially, so that the light bubble is the father, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me what the gist of this text message is.
So this is Jaden communicating with me that Labor Day weekend, he had made plans and would not be coming to visit her, or the weekend of the 16th. I asked him if he plans to come at all. So, okay, plans like you are busy or plans like you can't come. And he said that, correct, those are weekends that I won't be up for a visit.
Okay. And Your Honor, I'd ask to admit Exhibit 23.
Any objection?
No objection.
23 is admitted.
Can you go to Exhibit 22 and tell me what's going on? Or first, who is this between, this set of text messages?
Well, I can barely see. I can't see what is red in the black bubbles.
Okay. No, the printer didn't do a very good job. I see. How far away are you? Yes, sorry, you have to leave for graduation. This is why your time is between 9 to 10. Does that remind you of who?
Yes. Okay, so this is actually in June. I was invited to a couple graduation parties. I had put the first graduation party off because of the meeting Jaden to have that visit. I was down there waiting for him with Jalen for a very large amount of time, and he never responded to me. And then I said, hey, like, you haven't talked to me. What are you doing? And he said that that he was still far away. I said, your pickup time is between your pickup time is between 9 and 10. It is now 10:10, and I have not had any communication from you. He said, I'm sorry about that. He was on his way. Would you like me not to come up then? And I said, how far away are you? And he said, about an hour. And I said, yes, sorry. I have to leave for a graduation party. He said, there's some traffic in Portland today as well. I said, okay. I said, that is why your time is between 9 and 10.
Okay. So did he make up any of those visits?
I always offer to make those visits up. Yes.
And has he ever utilized that makeup visitation?
Twice, I believe.
Okay. So we've got that he is 50% of the time he's more than an hour late. Does he ever drop the child off early?
He has a couple times, yes.
Okay. So he misses visitation. He doesn't make up visitation. He's late to pick up, early to drop off. Can you go to exhibit 17? What is this that I'm looking at?
I keep a record of all the visits, and if anything important were to happen during those visits, or if they were canceled, or anything that I was told before we started communicating more via the messaging apps and stuff. This is how I would document what happened at visits.
Okay. And is this about right? It says, let me get this straight. So it's documentation of the visit, and it says who's present. So for October 2022, Jaden and Michelle. And then it says, it goes through the visits like that. It says who's present and what happened. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it says if he canceled visits or did no calls. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And rather than go through all of these, I just have you flip through it real quick. In the interest of saving time, would you say that information presented there is a true and accurate picture of what you diaried and what actually occurred on this?
Yes, it's true.
He also has video calls, correct?
Yes.
And how does he utilize those?
More often now, but in the beginning, we had a lot of missed calls or calls very short. Even now, the calls sometimes are very short. Jalen gets sidetracked pretty easy, and if I'm not helping the two of them engage with each other, it's very, very short-lived. So if I'm engaging and helping her and having her, ask Daddy how his day went, and those type of things, they're quite a bit shorter.
And are you only in contact with Jaden, or is anybody else from his side in contact with you concerning these visits?
Most of the time, it would be Michelle that would be contacting.
Is that over Jaden? Michelle contacts you more than Jaden?
Yes.
Okay. And let's go to exhibit 19.
This is text messages from Michelle to me.
Okay. And tell me what the gist of those text messages are.
This is just text messages. The first page would be of their going to an activity at the mall. They want me to make sure that she's wearing comfy clothes and bring fingernail polish so that fingernail polish or polish remover so that they could paint her nails.
So they asked you to bring that?
Yes.
Okay. Did they ever ask you to supply them with any other items during visitation?
Yes. For I would say for the first 7 months, we provided them with a backpack full of clothes and essentials, and I had snacks put in there. Many times they would ask if I could put certain color bows in her hair or make sure she was wearing certain items so they could do a picture or things like that.
Were you ever reimbursed for the purchase of any of those things?
No.
Okay. And did you find any issues when the child was returned to you? Did you notice any issues with the child?
Yes.
Tell us about those.
Jaylin is a very picky kid when it comes to wanting to be clean. She loves to play in the dirt and she loves to get muddy and gross and dirty and wet. But as soon as the activity is over, she wants to be dry and clean. And there were quite a few occasions where she was returned to me with wet clothes. And the instant she sees me, she asks to be changed. I know that they fed her a lot of fast food items. Often, though, she still comes home asking for food.
And there are people present. You stated that there are people present on the majority of visits with Jaden, correct?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, Has Jaden ever taken the child during one of these visits and driven back to the home of Michelle Harrington?
Yes, to my knowledge, I believe that he has.
Okay. And Michelle Harrington, her son is a registered sex offender, correct?
Correct.
Did anybody disclose that to you at the start of this case?
No,
Did Jaden ever disclose that to you prior to litigation?
no.
Okay. How did you only come to find that out after you had hired counsel?
Yes.
And do you know where Jaden works currently?
I don't know the name of it, but I know, I've been told that he is working.
Okay. And do you know what city it's in?
Silverton, I believe.
Okay. And where does Grandma Teresa Ludwig live?
In Toledo, Oregon.
And how long of a drive are they between each other?
I believe it's about 2.5 hours.
Okay, so it's 2.5 hours from girlfriend's house to grandma's house.
Yes.
Okay. And is it your understanding, belief that he plans on keeping his job and living at grandma's house?
I think that's what he's told me. Yes. That is not what I believe is going to happen, though.
Okay, and what do you believe is going to happen?
I believe that if he regains custody, he will take her to grandma's house for a very short period of time, and then he will move her into with his girlfriend.
Okay. And he doesn't pay rent at any of these locations, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Has grandma ever kicked him and the kid out before?
Yes, several times.
Okay. Did that make them homeless?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, are any of the underlying reasons that grandma kicked him out, are they still there?
I'm
Yes.
going to object. I don't know that this is apparently hearsay. I'm not sure what the foundation,
So the objection related to the question was, are some of the issues that led to the prior removals, evictions, kicking out still in place? If she has knowledge of that, she can answer. Overruled.
Yes, Jaden still looks very unkept. He actually shows up to visit every single visit in the same pair of socks every single time. So a lot of the time his clothes are very, very dirty and unkept. His car smells at times and it doesn't look very clean.
Does he smoke?
Yes.
Okay. To the best of your knowledge, does he smoke in outside or inside cars? Do you know anything about that?
His car does smell like cigarette smoke, and does Jalen's car seat. I am unaware if he's actually smoking in the car when Jalen's present. I know that he is smoking in her presence, though.
Okay. And Michelle Harrington, has he ever been kicked out of her house, to the best of your knowledge?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And how old is Michelle Harrington? Do you remember?
I believe she's 54.
And how old is Jaden?
I believe he's 23.
Okay. And they're together. They're boyfriend and girlfriend, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And has he ever lived with another girlfriend and been kicked out?
Yes.
And do you remember why? What were the reasons being kicked out of that
I'm
girlfriend?
going to object as to foundation.
I can actually.
What's your lay foundation?
Okay. Do you know any of his previous girlfriends?
Yes.
Okay. Had you ever been over to their house?
No.
Okay. I will strike that line of questioning then and kind of change tack. Has Jaden ever has Jaden ever requested collateral contact on a substance abuse evaluation?
Yes, I believe that he wants me to provide the financial means for him to take that.
And when did you realize that?
After you made me aware of this.
Okay, so in the trial brief.
Yep.
Okay. Had he ever contacted you directly and asked, hey, let's get this going?
No.
No. Okay. Had you ever been contacted by anybody asking for a contact about him and his drug and alcohol use?
No.
Okay. Had he ever reached out to you for mental health evaluation, finances, or anything of that nature?
No.
Did anyone else reached out to you on behalf of him to write a report on his mental health?
No.
How about domestic violence? The same thing, evaluation?
No.
Okay. And does he pay child support today?
No.
Has, since the start of this litigation, and I believe it was started in August of 2022, is that correct? Yeah. Has he paid a cent in child support since that time?
No.
Okay. And you have had Jalen how many days a week?
5 days or 7 days a week for almost 2 years now. For
And
over 2 years now. Yeah.
Does the mom pay any child support?
No.
Do you get any state benefits?
No.
So you are paying out of pocket for this child.
Yes. The only state benefit she has is medical benefits. She does have state medical, and she has daycare paid,
Okay,
but no financial benefits.
nothing else. And you became aware that dad was working, correct?
Right.
Did dad come over with boxes of clothes or anything like that after he got this new job?
He has periodically bought her a new shirt that says "Daddy loves me" on it. Very, very periodically. But nothing, no boxes of clothes, no packages of socks or underwear, nothing like that, no.
Okay. And so he's never, it would be a good summary, he's never financially supported this child.
No.
And he currently, to the best of your knowledge, he has no lease agreement with any third party, correct?
Not to the best of my knowledge, no.
Does he have his own car?
He did at the beginning of the visits, but for the last couple months, I have not seen this vehicle.
And who's been driving then?
He either borrows his grandmother's car or Michelle's car, or Michelle drives.
Okay. So he has no place in his own name to live, correct?
Correct.
He appears to not have his own car anymore, correct?
Correct.
He's never supported the child, correct?
Correct.
And tell me about the place that he intends to move with this child. Leave the sex offender house alone. Grandma's house. How many bedrooms does grandma's house have?
Grandma's house has 2 very, very small bedrooms.
Okay. And how many people would be living there?
4.
And if I can have you quickly look to exhibit 28. Is that grandma's house?
Yes, both of those houses, the smaller of the 2 houses in the middle, are grandmother's house.
Okay. So she owns both of them. Does she only reside in one, or is he
Yes.
reside in the other? How is that?
She only resides in the one on the right-hand side. The one on the left-hand side is not livable.
Has it been condemned?
I am not sure if it's been condemned or not. I know that the last I was in there, it didn't have electricity and it had mold in it, and they were using it as a storage facility.
Okay, if I can have you turn to exhibit 27. So the land segments, the residential lot, and the site development on no electricity. Instead of using this form, I think I'll just go with that. So there's no electricity in that house?
Not when I was in there last, no.
Okay, and you wouldn't know if they condemned it?
No, I would not.
Okay. Is that the 109?
I'm not sure which one. Do you have the address to the other one?
Yeah, 115.
I believe 109 is the one that is unlivable.
And Your Honor, you can look at 27 on your own. Those 27 and 28 were already admitted in the ER 904 anyway. And 29 is just the Google Maps showing how long it would take from grandma's to get to where the child goes to school currently. Is that correct? About 2 hours and 53 minutes, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And how long has the child been in that program?
Since she came to our house before June of 2021. So.
Okay, and she's got friends?
Oh, yes, very much.
Okay, and she knows some of the teachers?
Yes.
Okay. And I think I'm just about done. I'm just to get one of the exhibits in as well. Exhibit 18. Can you tell me what we're looking at in exhibit 18?
Yes. So I after I filed the motion and all of that to gain temporary custody of Jaylin, we still thought it was important that Jaylin had contact with Jaylin, and we did invite her to her birthday party a couple weekends later. And this was a picture taken of Jaden playing the duck machine as Jaylin was opening her birthday presents.
Okay, and so what do you think is the significance of that picture?
This just shows that even after being away from his daughter for 1.5 years and having such a big moment in her life, that he is not present with her at all.
Okay. Do you know who Crystal Trout is?
I believe that is Jaden's biological mother.
Okay, and do you know anything about her?
I know that she gave custody of her 2 kids, Jaden and Holly, to Kai when they were very young. I know that she has had some criminal history in the past. I know that she struggles to take care of her own needs.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions.
Okay, we'll turn the time to Mr. Anagnostou for cross-examination.
Do you recall our hearing on regards to the emergency guardianship in your testimony?
I recall that we had testimony. I could not recall everything that was said in that.
Sure. And isn't it true that you said you want Jaylyn returned to her father?
I believe that in the big scheme of things that that is what we've all wanted the whole time.
Okay. And I asked you for a plan on how to accomplish that. Do you recall that?
Vaguely.
Okay, vaguely. You have been opposed to Jaden having overnight visits. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
All right. And you have made an allegation that you believe Jaylyn has been to Michelle Harrington's house where her son resides.
Correct.
You have no proof of that. Is that correct?
I only have what I've been told.
Okay. Isn't it true that your attorney did a Google search of my client and where he has goes during visits?
I believe that your client submitted that in the discovery.
Okay. And in fact, she included a bunch of those documents here today in for trial. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. And are you aware that at no point did my client take Jaylyn to Silverton, Oregon, where Michelle lives?
I was not aware of that. No.
You haven't been through that discovery with your attorney?
Your Honor, I'm going to object. It's a confusing and leading question, and it doesn't accurately summarize the information provided in the exhibit.
So the objection's overruled. It might be helpful to refer to a particular exhibit if there's something that may provide greater clarity, not only for the witness, but for myself.
Have you reviewed the Google search history that my client submitted?
Yes, it's pretty confusing. So I have not memorized it.
Okay. At the hearing on the ex parte emergency guardianship at the last one, your attorney cross-examined my client with regards to that Google search history. Were you present for that?
I was.
Okay. And would you agree that he was questioned whether or not he went to Silverton, Oregon, when in fact he was in Silver Lake, Washington?
I don't have knowledge of exactly what time and where he was at when he was at, except in specific instances in this. So I'm not sure which days you're referring to.
Okay, I'm just referring to the testimony at that hearing on the emergency guardianship where he was questioned with regards to where he had gone with Jaylyn during a specific visit.
I'm not aware of that specific visit. Can you give me a date of that visit?
Yes, I believe your attorney was asking in particular to, what date was that? It was, well, I don't have that date in front of me, so I'll withdraw that question. We had begun trial on May 5th, 2023 in this action. You recall that?
Yes.
And you testified on May 5th of 2023.
Yes.
Okay. And I asked you, what is the plan for getting Jaylyn with my client? Because you basically said you want Jaylyn to be with my client. Is that correct?
I'm not sure exactly the questions you asked me on that.
Okay. I asked you, okay, so you're not opposed to overnight visits. You just don't want them down in Oregon. And your answer was, I don't want Jaylyn to be in a car for 6 hours on the weekend and have a chance to go to a convicted molester's house. That was your answer?
If that's what it states it is.
Okay.
I don't recall my exact answer.
All right. And then, so I asked, so you're aware, or maybe not aware, that the visits would not occur at Michelle's house. In your answer, I'm aware that they're not supposed to occur at Michelle's house.
Correct.
Okay. So I asked you if my client had an overnight, because at the time we were talking about getting overnights to my client to move this visitation along. If he had an overnight visit, let me put it to you, if he had an overnight visit and he took Jalen to his grandmother's house in Toledo, Oregon, wouldn't you be able to confirm that? Do you recall that?
I recall the statement, and I recall my answer is that I would have no way of confirming where he is during those visits.
Okay, and I pointed out, is it correct that you could call the grandmother, you could talk to Jalen during visits?
I was under the assumption that when they're having their personal time, I should not be involved in that.
That's just an assumption on your part.
I'm going to object to that line of questioning. Counsel is testifying.
The objection's overall. She can answer if she knows.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
That's an assumption on your part.
Actually, it's not an assumption. Sherry Farr has informed me even during phone visits to be as in the background as I possibly can to let them have that personal private time by themselves.
So I just want to clarify your position. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you are concerned that my client would take Jalen to Michelle Harrington's house in Silverton, Oregon.
I have many concerns about an overnight visit, that being one of them, yes.
Yeah, that's one of them. And in fact, you take the position that you think he's already been there, although you don't have any proof of that.
That is my opinion.
Okay, and in fact, the Google search doesn't provide any proof of that.
Mr. Anagnostis, you asked me this already, and I have told you my answer for that. I'm sorry.
All right. So, but this is the question. So
I will answer again as I don't, unless you give me specifics.
No, let me ask the question, ma'am. Please, let me finish my question. The question is, if Jaden, during these temporary orders, had visitation overnight with his daughter, you would not confirm that Jalen was actually in Toledo, Oregon, with staying at the grandmother's house.
I do not believe that if we are at the point where Jalen would be getting overnight visits, that I should have to confirm that. And that is the point in itself, is that I don't believe that he would be taking care of her by himself or at his grandmother's house.
Okay. So I just want to get this clear. He never gets Jalen returned to him. Is that my understanding? Because you're not going to confirm that he's caring for Jalen.
Are you going to confirm that he's caring for Jalen?
So,
Yeah.
Ms. Grape, so as far as questions, it's a one-way street. I
Okay.
apologize. So, Mr.
Sorry.
Madden,
I just feel like we've asked this question like 4 different ways, and I don't know how else to answer it to satisfy him. I feel like Jaden loves his daughter, and eventually if he could get the things done and that he needs to get done to be able to take care of her, then he sometime in the future, if he could do those things, then she should be with her father. But I do not believe right now he is capable of taking care of her and keeping her safe.
Right. And that's your opinion. There's allowing him to have Jalen overnight and follow through on his proposal. You have objected to that.
I have.
Okay.
I don't believe he's at the state right now where he can solely take care of Jalen for an overnight visit.
In that exchange on May 5th, 2023, I had asked you, there's a question I asked you. Now you're aware that my client has brought several motions to expand visits to even on weekends here, and you have argued against those. And your answer was, I have not argued against those. Sherry Farr, the guardian ad litem, has argued against those. Is it your position that it's Ms. Farr making the decision as to whether he should have overnights?
No, you asked me if I had been the one arguing against them, and I hadn't at the time. My opinion still is that he should not have overnights.
All right. So your statement at that hearing, I have not argued against having overnights. Sherry Farr, the guardian ad litem, has argued against them.
I was referring to the report that Sherry Farr made, stating that she doesn't feel that it was appropriate for him to have overnight visits. Therefore, I agree with her. And
now, we also had a conversation, isn't it true, with regards to the no contact restraining order? Do you recall that?
when was this?
Hmm?
And what court hearing was this? We've had many conversations about this. So I'm not sure which conversation you're referring to.
This is your testimony again on the May 5th, 2023 hearing.
Okay.
I said, you received a no contact order against my client. You said yes. And I asked if my client would have violated that. It was your intent to report that. And you said if he would have violated it, no contact order myself, I would have. You would have called that in, right?
Yes, because of the point of the no contact order would be no contact. So if he is violating the order that the judge put in place, then I would be turning him in for violating an order. Yes.
Okay. And then I asked you specifically, and you believed the order was in effect until October of last year.
I did, because I was not notified.
Right. And your answer was yes.
Mhm.
And this is my question. And at any time up until October, if you would have had, if he would have contacted you and you thought it was in effect, you would have reported that to the police.
Yes.
Right. And that's what you said then too. So both you and my client believed that the no contact order was in place.
I don't know what your client believed. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, you believed it was in place.
I did. And I also believed it was in place when he contacted us, the day he contacted us. And
And you
I
called
called.
the police.
I did. I called and they told me that it was not in place. And then he came.
But it was when you called the police, it was your intent to, if it was in place, to report him and have him criminally prosecuted.
Wrong. No, he informed us that the no contact order was no longer in place. So that's when we called, and I called and asked if it was no longer in place. And they told me that it was not in place.
Right. But until you knew it wasn't in place and you felt it was in place, you would have called and reported him for a criminal violation.
I'm sorry. What was the, I don't understand the question.
When the no contact order was in place, had he violated it, you would have called and had him reported for a criminal prosecution, violation of a no contact order.
Yes. Again, when a contact order is put in place, he cannot, that would be my job, is to call and report if he breaks the contact order.
Okay. And you felt that was in place and you would have had that same reaction all the way up till October.
He is the one that informed
I'm going to object, Your Honor. It's
Sustained,
it's
asked and answered.
hypothetical.
Sustained.
Okay. All right. Isn't it true that after he informed you and he indicated he was going to come get Jaylyn, that you had gotten a message to him, either you or Kai, that yeah, let's take this slow, let's introduce you, and then you can take her to Oregon?
No, I'm not recalling that conversation. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I never once said then you could take her to Oregon. I never had that conversation with him.
All right. You asked him to not come up and get her immediately.
I'm not sure exactly what I asked him.
Okay. In any event, Jaylyn was not turned over to my client on that first visit. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. She was turned over that night.
And he had an overnight.
He did have an overnight with himself, his grandmother, his girlfriend, and his grandfather.
All right. And then what happened after that? He returned to Oregon.
He brought her back to us, and then returned to Oregon.
Why? From your point of view, why did he bring her back?
Maybe because he didn't think he could fully take care of her yet, or that he didn't have a bond with her. I'm
going to object, Your Honor. She can't know his mind. And these questions, again, are hypothetical.
Sustained, calls for speculation.
All right. My client has indicated that he would be residing with Jaylyn at Teresa Ludwig's house. You're aware of that?
Yes.
And are you aware that Kai Ludwig resided there with my client and his sister?
At some point in time, he did reside there for a short period of time, I believe.
Okay. And my client has supplied pictures of where Jaylyn will be sleeping in her bedroom and all that. You've seen that, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And there is he's found daycare within a short distance.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. My client has a lack of personal knowledge on this. and it would be speculative.
Sustained.
Jaylyn has been in daycare while she's resided with you. Is that correct?
Jaylyn goes to a preschool program.
Okay.
So yes, she goes to a very rigorous preschool program that she goes to 5 days a week. Yes.
What's the relationship like between Jaylyn and Jaden?
I couldn't guess, only for what I see. She is happy to see him. He comes, he takes her and picks her up and does, fun things, takes her to the park and plays with her. So I believe any 3-year-old would be happy to do that on the weekends. I know that he loves her. That's never been my question. There's times where she doesn't want to leave my side to go to him. She's kind of shy at times, but I'm not aware of how their visits are, how they behave in those visits, or what the relationship is like during those visits.
And Jaylyn has not been in diapers for some time now. Is that correct?
Correct. I potty trained her.
So when you say she's wet, are you talking about she has spilled something on her? Or?
Yes. She's fallen down in a puddle or spilled something on herself or those type of things.
But it's not because she's wet her pants.
She has wet her pants a few times because they couldn't get her to a bathroom in time, or didn't have access to a bathroom during a visit.
Because he has only had day visits, correct?
Correct, except for the one that very first time.
He has supplied a lot of pictures. Have you seen those during the visits?
I have seen some of the pictures, yes.
Of them being at restaurants and eating and that kind of stuff during the visits.
I've seen a couple of them being at restaurants, yes.
Okay. I don't think I have any further questions.
Okay. Redirect examination.
Yes. Quick question. What safety measures would you like to see in place before there are overnights with father?
I would like to see him do the assessments, the drug and alcohol, the domestic violence, and the anger management. All of those things put in place. I would like to see him take initiative and parent her without the courts having to tell him, hey, she really does need a nap and you really have to lay her down for a nap, and have his own place, place to be. So we can be sure that she's not going to be living with a registered sex offender or in a place that she doesn't have enough space to grow.
And is part of that him having his own lease so that he can't get kicked out? Is that kind of like that as well?
Yes.
That's in leading.
Sustained.
And his job, how long has he been working?
At this one, I think maybe 5, maybe 6 months.
And do you feel comfortable? He makes $16 an hour, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That is from what I've been told.
And I believe it's 32 hours a week. At what level of job stability would you personally feel that he's kind of hit that benchmark that you would be looking for?
I would like to see Jaden have a job within a certain distance of where he would be living. So if he's living in Toledo and driving 2.5 hours for a job, that means for 5 hours a day, Jalen's not in his care, plus the 8 hours a day. So that's the majority of the day. To me, that shows that he's probably, if he's going to maintain his job in Silverton, that he's probably going to be taking up residence in Silverton to not be commuting. So I think that he needs to have a job closer to where he's living and maybe have income that can support him. I'm not sure at what level of income that would be, but I would really like to see him be able to start supporting her.
Okay. And, again, throughout this, he has visitation. Has he inquired since he's had visitation on the medical needs of the child?
Never.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Let me take that back. If Jalen is sick or I tell him, hey, Jalen threw up at school today. He asks if I could send him a paper stating that she is excluded from school, or if she has a fever, he's requesting that I send him a picture of the thermometer.
Okay. And if I can have you turn to Exhibit 34, which is the Google takeout. Now, a Google takeout is essentially telling you where you are. It turns out our phones really are following us. And this is essentially the raw data done. Where is Silverton, Oregon, and who lives there?
Silverton, Oregon is a place where Jaden resides with Michelle Harrington and her son.
And the son is the sex offender, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And on June 10th, did Jaden, so June 10th is June 10th was a Saturday. It's the second Saturday of the month of June. Do you recall if Jaden had visitation with the child on June 10th?
Let me look at I do believe that they had a visit on June 10th. Yes.
Okay. So according to the Google dump, he starts the day off in Silverton, Oregon. And then if you'll move to, so
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just realized that was the one where he did not come to the house because he was going to be late.
Okay. And did he tell you why he was late?
Traffic, he said.
Okay. And have you ever known him to, well, I've already asked, but you've known him to smoke weed in the past, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would you be surprised, and I will find the page here, would you be surprised if he was late due to making a stop at a marijuana shop on his way?
I would not be surprised, no.
Okay. And I can get back to that. Did he have a visit on June 18th?
June 8th?
June 18th. I found it. It's on page 351, Silver Creek Dispensary.
351.
And then it looks like a Thai restaurant for lunch, a very early lunch. What time was he supposed to be there at?
He's supposed to pick up the child between 9 and 10.
And what time did you finally say you're too late at?
10:10.
Okay. And it looks to be here at 10:10. You can actually follow the time on here. Let's see, 10:10. He was at 443 North.
In Silverton.
Where's that?
That's
the address of Michelle Harrington?
I believe so.
Okay. So if this is correct, and I'm not saying it is, it looks like at 10:10 on June 10th that he was still at his residence.
Correct.
Did he tell you he was on the road already, or did he tell you?
He told me his exact words were they ran into traffic in Portland.
Okay.
At 10:10.
Okay. And I see no Portland anything here. June 18th, did he have visitation with the child? Which is also a Saturday. Oh, sorry. June 18th is a Sunday.
And I believe that was that Father's Day?
I believe it was Father's Day.
Yes, he had a visit.
And how long was that visit?
Regular time.
Which is how many hours?
From like 9 or 10 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night.
And on June 18th, which starts on, where do you remember where he picked the child up from?
I don't recall. It was either my house or it could be many places. There sometimes if I'm going into town, I'll try to save him the drive all the way up to my house or all the way up to Castle Rock, and I'll meet him in Longview if I'm going to town on weekends. But most of the time it was either at my house or the pizza parlor in Castle Rock. Okay, so this shows that it was near. Is that by where you guys are at? Yeah, I believe that is the pizza parlor. Okay, and so he picks the child up, and it appears that he drives the child on that day. And he goes to another house in Longview, and that is the house of Dallas Boosie. Do you know who Dallas is? I was made aware of Dallas actually this morning. Okay, so you don't know who Dallas is? I had no idea who he was until this morning. Okay. On that day, do you know if was Dad alone or was Dad with anybody else that day on Father's Day? I believe he was with, I think he was with Michelle that day. Okay. And so on that same day, after picking up the child, and this is on 478, it's 478, it appears he goes to 420 Holiday. Do you know what kind of store that is? I unfortunately do. And what kind of store is that? That is a marijuana shop. Okay. But Dad wasn't alone with the child, correct? I just want to make sure that, can you for sure tell me if Dad was alone? I cannot for sure tell you if he had somebody with him or not. Okay. I don't believe minors are allowed in there, but maybe no different is, how old is she? 3, correct? She's 3, yes. Well, I won't ask you that because I don't know how you would know, but I don't believe I have, you know what? I don't think I have any further questions.
Okay, Mr. Anagnosto, any recross examination?
Just a couple, just very briefly. Ms. Crape, do you know what's in the vicinity of 420 Holiday?
I don't recall what, I mean, there's,
Isn't there a donut shop right next to it?
I don't know, I'm sorry.
Isn't Chipotle right next to the donut shop?
I
And
don't know.
across the street is the Three River Mall.
I know where the Three River Mall is. I don't believe that there's a donut shop there. I'm sorry.
Okay, we are, you started this action in October of last year. We're 10 months into it, and you're asking that assessments be done in parenting classes at this point?
I have been requesting that all along, yes.
Okay, and from our point of view, there's no basis for it, but in any event, he has repeatedly indicated if you paid for it, he would take whatever assessments you want him to take.
So I was not made aware of that. However, me and Kyla are solely supporting his child and getting no financial assistance from him. We do not have the financial assistance to also support him and getting these things done.
You were unaware of that? He put that in his last declaration that he filed to the court. Did you review that?
I'm sorry, but there's a lot to review. So I must have missed the fact that he wants me to pay for that. So I've never been contacted by anybody requesting payment, nor could I afford at this point in time payment to supply these things for him.
But isn't it true? It's your point, it's your indication that he needs an anger management evaluation assessment and these other drug and alcohol and those type of things.
I believe it's not only mine, but it's the guardian ad litem also.
All right. I don't think I have any other questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thanks everybody for your efforts this morning. We'll take our lunch recess. We will be back at 1:30 and we'll start promptly at 1:30.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.